Okay. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming this early. I know 10 a.m. is pretty early for one of the College2Career workshops. So thank you so much everyone for coming. Today we are joined by Soleil. She is a rising sophomore at USNA Naval Academy.
Just click on the computer screen.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. So yeah, here are some pictures compiled of USNA. Yeah. So Soleil, do you want to introduce yourself?
So hi, I'm Soleil. I'm currently a third class midshipman at the United States Naval Academy, and that means that I'm just a sophomore. So plebes are, which is freshmen, they're fourth class, and then it goes up until first class. And so I graduated from Newport High School in 2021. Is anyone here from Newport? You are? Okay, that's cool. Okay. And it's funny because right after graduation, I reported to USNA. So I didn't get a summer basically last year. So yeah, getting the best that I can right now. And some ECAs I did in high school are I was on the drill team and I did swim and dive. And I also did volunteering. Like I volunteered at the Little Masters Club a couple of times at Beijing. And some clubs and activities I do at the Naval Academy now are, I'm on Navy Spirit dance, which is a little bit like drill, but we do more like cheer components and stuff. And I'm also part of the Chinese Culture Club. Okay, so some information about the Naval Academy are that it's one of the 5 service academies. So we have West Point, I'm sure many of you might be familiar with that more. And there's also the Air Force Academy, which was actually my first choice before applying to the Naval Academy. And there's also Coast Guard and Merchant Marine Academy. So tuition is free at the Naval Academy, but after graduation, you have a 5-year service commitment, neither the Navy or Marine Corps. And some of the major service selection categories are surface warfare, which is basically when you go on boats and warships, and you're a naval officer on those ships. And we also have submarine warfare, and that's when, submarines, and you're a submarine officer. Naval aviation, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Top Gun, which is Navy pilot, and that's what this is. And finally, we have the Marine Corps, which is about half of our class selects Marine Corps. And so our student body is called the Brigade of Midshipmen. So when we do formations and stuff, they yell brigade, and they say attention, because that's what they call us. And we're consisted of plebes, which are freshmen, youngsters, which are sophomore. So I'll be a youngster next year, and second class, and firsties, which are seniors. And most of the brigade leadership is led by the firsties. And after graduation, everyone receives a Bachelor of Science, no matter what major you have. So you can major in English, and you'll still have a BS.
Yeah. And USNA is based in Maryland, but
Yeah.
some of the trainings, I believe, might be at different locations.
Yeah, so over the summer we have different trainings, and after plebe year we have Protramid, and it's either in the East Coast or the West Coast. So for the East Coast, it's in Norfolk, Virginia, and West Coast is in San Diego, California. And I was just in San Diego last month. So yeah.
Okay, so for a quick table of contents, what we're gonna go over today, we'll start off with the USNA application system, then talk about some of the academics and majors. Then we'll move on to life on campus, and then career after military school. Okay, so starting with the USNA application system, how does the application process differ from applying to non-military colleges? What do you think are some of the key components in the application?
I think that some of the main differences are that when you're applying to service academies, you need to have a nomination from your congressman, and that comes from applying because they have a bunch of applicants and you have to apply, and there are only 5 people at each service academy for each representative of the House at a time. So usually 1 spot opens up each year, or 2 spots. So you would apply to both 2 senators and your representative based on your whatever congressional district you're in. And you also need to be physically fit because we have to pass a CFA, and that's also an essential part of the application.
Okay, so kind of like related, what qualifications do you think are key to being selected?
I think that the Naval Academy looks for a a lot of volunteer work and leadership. So if you're a captain of a sports team, that's like killing two birds with one stone, because you have like the physical aspect and you have the leadership aspect. And also a lot of, I think, community service, because they like to see, because after you graduate, you're going to be, your whole life is going to be committed to service after that. So they like to see like early commitments to like volunteering and community service.
Out of the large application process, which part did you find the most challenging, or do you think is the most challenging?
I think the most challenging was actually the commitment to applying, just because it's such a long process. I think I started thinking about the Naval Academy this summer after my junior year, which is relatively late compared to my peers, because a lot of people, they do summer programs such as Summer STEM, which I'll talk about later in the presentation, and Summer Seminar, which is like a pre-program to the Naval Academy. And that starts in your early years of high school. And well, actually, my application started late, but I was like very scared to committing to the application process, just because if I failed at one point, then I wouldn't be able to continue, even though I devoted so much effort into this.
So what does a general timeline of the application process look like? How early should you start planning?
Yeah, I'll just, that slide, it's good. So freshman, sophomore year, as I said, there's a program that we offer. It's called Summer STEM, and it just exposes you to the academy and our STEM. We have a very STEM-oriented curriculum, so it just exposes you to a lot of our subjects, and it's taught by our professors and other midshipmen. So yeah, it's a good, if you're thinking about the Naval Academy, it's a good way to start. And junior year, you can apply to the Summer Seminar program, which is less academically based, but it's more physically and mentally based, and it'll prepare you for the mental and moral aspects of the Naval Academy. And the summer of junior year is when you should probably start the application process. So I'd recommend after Summer Seminar, if you choose to do that, that's when you should start looking at nominations, which most of them are due in November. And finally, the candidate fitness assessment, which is just a physical test that we have to take. And that one, I think you can only take it once, but usually you can take it once during summer seminar, but I would recommend taking it again just so you can get the best scores. And after that, we have, after you get accepted, so after senior year, we have this thing called Plebe Summer, which is basically the indoctrination into the military. So you know, I'm sure all of you know what boot camp is. The military, that's basically our version of boot camp.
Okay, so part of the application process also does include like an essay section. Do you have any suggestions for that? Is there anything you think should be highlighted or focused on?
So I think one of the main things that they look for is a struggle in terms of your moral compass, or one time you were challenged morally. And I think that's actually one of the prompts that you have to write about, but I would recommend writing about one time you were challenged morally, because they want to see like your true character and the concept of honor in you. So yeah, we have an honor concept, and it's just basically just don't lie or cheat or steal, and that's like very important to us because that's what makes us the midshipmen.
Yeah, definitely. So you touched on this a little bit earlier, but do you think there's any like ECs that assisted you into getting into USNA, and if so, in what ways?
I think that, so I volunteered at Little Masters Club. I think that assisted me a lot, and I also taught coding to a bunch of middle schoolers, I think during my senior year, and I think those two probably helped me a lot.
Okay, so back to the nominations, which is basically everyone who is planning to apply must obtain a nomination from an official source. So like a US representative or US senator representing your congressional district. Do you have any tips or suggestions for getting the nomination? Is there anything like you need to provide, like a sheet, fill out a form, something like that?
So in Washington, they have like an online process for the application. It's basically like applying to a college, kind of. You put down your preferences for the academies, and you put in your info. And I think you also need to submit a resume. So I think they look for the same thing that the service academies look for, which is leadership and volunteering and service.
So do you have to reach out to the, I guess, official source by yourself, or is there like a process you go through?
You don't have to reach out directly, but they do have an online application that will like reach them at one point.
Okay. So another part that was mentioned is the medical examination and candidate fitness assessment. What was that like? Did you have to do any extra work or training to prepare for it?
So the medical examination is just like a normal like checkup. It's just to make sure you don't have any injuries that might hinder you from being able to, succeed at the Naval Academy. And the candidate physics assessment is just, it's kind of like a PE test or something. You just like run a mile, and there are some other things that I don't really remember all of them, but there's like a basketball throw, a sprint maybe, and some curl ups and pull ups, I think.
Cool. So after the entire application, or the final part of the admissions process is there is an interview. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations for the interview? How did you prepare for it, and what do you think the best way to prepare for it is?
I think that it depends by person to person. For me, I don't really like preparing for stuff like interviews just because then I freeze up and then I only memorize what I like memorize. So I think the best interviews are what turn into conversations. So I guess when your blue and gold officer is interviewing you, just try to treat it as a conversation and be yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess this could also be applicable for like other colleges interviews as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be yourself, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a question, can you transfer into USNA, and how does it differ from applying as a first year?
So you can transfer into USNA and you would have to reapply, but so we accept everyone until they're 23 years old. So you could, I think there's one of my friends, he went to college for 3 years and then reapplied to USNA and got in. So even after like 3 years of college experience, it was really weird because he's like almost 26 now because he was a second class when I met him. But yeah, so, and we also have a program called NAPS, which is the preparatory school. And if you don't get in the first time, they might send you there. So after you graduate from that, you can go to the Naval Academy. And that's only in a one-year program. So yeah, you don't lose that much.
So even though the tuition for USNA is free, there is still the ROTC scholarship. So what's kind of the process for applying for it? How does this impact the application process?
The ROTC scholarship is for colleges so there's multiple ways to commissioning as an officer in the U.S. Armed Forces. So it's, one of the ways is like through service academies like the Naval Academy and West Point. And another way is through ROTC, which you can get in any normal college. And this is for if you want like a normal college experience, but you also want to be able to serve after you graduate. And the ROTC Scholarship offers free education for, I think, either 2 to 4 years. So you could either get a full scholarship or a couple year scholarship. And after that, you commission, just like at the Naval Academy or West Point, into the U.S. Army or U.S. Navy as an officer. So it's the same process, but yeah, you get a normal college experience, I guess. So yeah, if you're interested in that, I guess I'd recommend.
Yeah. So that basically wraps up most of our questions for the application process. So now we're going to shift the focus to academics and majors. So how does the education style differ from non-military colleges? Are there any advantages to attending a military college?
So, okay, so at the Naval Academy, our curriculum is, we have a core curriculum, so everyone gets education in like chemistry, physics, and I think EE, electrical engineering, no matter what your major is. So your first year, your plebe year, everything is planned out. You don't get to choose any classes because those are that's the first year that you come in, and they want to give you like a strong foundation for whatever your major is. No matter, even if you're an English major, you're gonna learn about chemistry, you're gonna learn about physics. And I think some colleges offer core curriculum, but it's not as structured as the Naval Academy. And And so what makes USNA different? Students are constantly challenged, they challenge themselves and others by the physical, moral, and mental mission. And so for the physical mission, we have to pass the physical readiness test every semester, and I think it's a 1.5 mile run, plank, and push-ups. And the moral concept is just, I mentioned this earlier, it's just thou shalt not lie, cheat, or steal. It's longer than that, but that's all you need to know for now. And the mental aspect is just academics and pushing each other to our limits. And something that I think is very special to the Naval Academy is that you form a very special bond between your peers after Plebe Summer, just because everybody that goes to the Naval Academy, they are assigned a company, and that company is basically your family, and you get very attached to that family. And I think that's very special just because I don't really see that in other colleges. And I think most of my friends are, I don't think I've met friends like that before. So yeah. And also commitment to service after graduation.
So how do you like USNA and your major? Do you think there's any strengths or uniquenesses compared to other colleges? And I guess another question, can you switch your major?
Okay, so I'm a computer science major, and I picked it in the spring. So as I said before, you have plebe year, which is freshman year, and all of that stuff is planned out. You don't get to choose any of it, but second semester of plebe year, so spring semester, you get to choose your major, and that's what determines what you do in the next 3 years. And I think that one of the strengths is that everyone is doing the same thing, so you can always go to help. You can knock on the door next door and be hey, can you help me with chemistry or physics or something? And I think that's really unique compared to other colleges, just because I think that other colleges, they don't have the same core curriculum that we do and the structure that we do. And yes, you can switch your major, but it's a bit hard to do that unless it's so if you're switching from quantitative economics to math with econ, that's not that big of a change. So yeah, you can definitely do that, but I wouldn't recommend switching from English to electrical engineering, because that's a lot.
So you mentioned selecting your major at the second semester of freshman year. So is the major, does that have any impact on the application process
for
USNA?
Oh, okay, so you've already gotten into the Naval Academy, so it doesn't impact your application process. And basically you just have preferences for your major, and some of them get filled up easily, like economics, because everyone wants to do that. And political science, I think, is very popular at our school for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, but it's not merit based, it's just whatever you choose, you get.
Okay. So can your AP scores be transferred into credits at USNA? I'm not sure if you took AP exams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, some of them will, but some of them they make you take a placement test, just so, because not all they don't, because we have a very unique curriculum, so some of the APs, the AP exams might not line up with our curriculum, so they just want to make sure that you're ready for the next course if you do decide to validate. And I think I took AP Gov. That was very helpful because you only need 4 to validate. And there was another one, I think chemistry. You can't use the AP score, unfortunately, but you can take the test. And physics as well. I think there are a couple more, but yeah, most of the time AP scores can be used to validate.
Yeah. So, kind of related, do you think high school advanced level or AP courses are related or helpful to these courses?
Yeah, I think a lot of AP scores, courses are helpful because, so I took physics last year and I realized that it was very similar to the AP class I took in high school. So that was very helpful. And honestly, I felt like a lot of the classes I had that I took at the Naval Academy last year were similar to courses that I took in high school, or AP courses that I took in high school. So yeah, it's very helpful.
Okay. So how much is the school workload and the training workload? What are some, or you mentioned the first year there's core courses, so you can't really choose. But I guess, what are some recommendations you have?
I'd recommend chemistry for sure, and physics, and definitely trying to take calc, but I think that in Bellevue they do a really good job of preparing you for college success. So I don't think it should be a problem.
What about like school workload versus training workload?
Oh yeah, so during plebe year, you never really have time for yourself just because you're overwhelmed with a lot of stuff. So you have plebe morning workouts at 5:30, and then school starts at 7:55. So in between that time, you have little time to yourself. But we do get free periods sometimes. So we have 6 periods, which it'll come up later. But we have 6 periods of academics, and some of them, if you have free periods, usually use that for training purposes. So we have this thing called professional knowledge, and we take a test every single week and it's related to like Navy concepts. So we had a week called surface warfare, which is learning about ships, and we had to memorize all of the crew and all the aspects of it. But usually, like, you learn how to manage your time during plebe year.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to incoming freshmen at USNA, and what about high schoolers in the college admissions process or application process?
So, as an incoming freshman at the Naval Academy, I think the main thing that you're gonna be worried about is Plebe Summer, just because that's like the barrier between you and the actual academy. So I think some advice I'd give for that time for Plebe Summer is to just don't forget who you are, because you might lose yourself during Plebe Summer because it's a little rough. Just because, yeah, it's a lot of yelling and not a lot of sleep. And about the college application process, I just say really look for colleges that you think you would fit into, and I'd recommend visit, just because COVID is almost, well, maybe it's not almost over, but I think you're allowed to fly now, so I'd recommend flying out to see some colleges that you might be interested in, and if they offer summer programs, I'd recommend doing that, just so you're familiar with the campus and what life would be like there.
Okay, so last question for this academics and majors part. What happens if you need to or want to drop out of military school, and how does this impact your education and future? I think the USNA like dropout rate is around 25%.
So I don't think it's that high, but people do. Yeah. So that's only because there was I think some of that statistic might be from there was like a physics scandal last year, but maybe, yeah. So if you want to drop out, so before your second last year, so your junior year, if you drop out, there's no penalty. So you get free education basically until your youngster year. But if you drop out after that, because we have to sign a paper called the 247, which means that, you've served 2 years, are you ready to serve 7 more years for the 5 years that after graduation? And if you sign that and you decide to drop out, you're basically violating a federal contract, and you have to pay back all the education that you took from the Naval Academy, basically. And this is, I guess, like, besides like money, this doesn't really impact your education, because you could always have like applied to another school after that.
Okay, so moving on to college.
Well, you learn to love it.
So what does a normal life or a day look like for you, like during weekdays, weekends, breaks, and how does this differ from other non-military college students?
This is what a typical day looks like in a day in the life. So I wake up usually at 6:30 but for plebe year I have to wake up at 5 for the morning workouts, and after that we have formation at 7, and that's when breakfast happens. So we line up as a company and we all walk down to breakfast together, and you eat with your company and your squad, so you learn to form those bonds that I talked about earlier. And after that we have academic periods 1 through 4, and each class is 50 minutes long. And usually, so our campus, it's not super big, so it takes like 5-minute walk to, like, if you're at like the center of the campus, then you could walk to anything in about like 10 minutes. So our periods are what's it called again, when after class and you have time to walk to the other class.
I don't know.
Oh, okay, yeah, you just have 10 minutes to walk to your next class. And after that we have formation at 12:05. But for plebes, which is your freshman year, you have training until your next class. And after that, we have 2 academic periods until 3:20. And after that, we have sports period, which is if you have a varsity sport, you have practice, and everyone at the Naval Academy has to play something or a sport as like some type of sport. So we have intramural stuff, which is company versus company, which a lot of people do because not everyone can be a varsity athlete because that you have to be recruited for that. So since I'm on the dance team, that counts as a sport, so I don't have to do intramural stuff. And after that, we have dinner, and dinner is the only meal that you can eat by yourself and not with your company, because lunch and breakfast you have to eat with your company and your squad. So yeah, you can take a couple of friends out to dinner, and yeah. And after that, we have a mandatory study period, which is when you have to be either in your room or the library, just because they want to section a piece of time for us to study, because we just had a very long day. After that, we have PAPS, which is, I don't know what it stands for, but it just means that we have to go to sleep.
So in your freshman year, do you have to do training right after lunch? It seems like there's like 40 minutes for lunch.
Yeah. So right after lunch, we have to run up and do training, usually. So yeah, during the last month of school, we didn't have any, so it was a very nice time for us.
Okay. So how safe would you say like attending USNA is during like education and training?
So I'd say it's relatively safe, pretty safe. Usually people don't get injured unless they have an injury, but they don't tell anyone about it, and they keep doing whatever they're doing without going to medical, which is, don't do that. And yeah, we have safety officers, and during any like high risk training, we have safety observers, because everyone is a safety observer, but we have special training safety observers, and yeah, they just make sure they don't hurt yourself.
Yeah. So what about the food and living situation? You mentioned you have to like eat breakfast and lunch in formations.
Yeah, so we have a cafeteria, it's called King Hall, and that's where all the midshipmen eat for breakfast and lunch, and for dinner you can go down there if you want, but a lot of people like to order food just because they want to taste of the outside after a day.
What about living situation?
Oh yeah, so living, we have rooms. I don't have a picture, but if you want to search up Bancroft. Bancroft Hall rooms, that should. Yeah, okay. So as midshipmen, you're gonna have at least one roommate. Some people have 2, some people have 3, some people have 5 actually. But yeah, so this is probably the most accurate. Yeah. But this looks like a 4-man, so there'd be one room there and then one bed behind this. Don't worry, our computers don't look like that anymore. Yeah, this is an old picture.
Okay, so what clubs and activities do you participate in at USNA? Do you have any recommendations?
So I'm, as I said before, I'm part of Navy Spirit, it consists of cheer and dance. I'm on the dance team, and I'm also on Chinese Culture Club. So yeah, I would recommend that. And I'm thinking about joining the cybersecurity team just because I'm a comp sci major, and I hope to be in the cyber field one day. So I hope to do that. And recommendations, I would say try everything until, I would say sign up for as much as you want to, and then drop out if you drop out until you only have the ones that you really want. So yeah, just like.
Okay, so moving on to careers after military school. So you mentioned you get a BS degree.
Mm-hmm.
So is that just your BS degree for whichever major you choose? What degree do you get after?
Yeah, so you just get a BS degree, and no matter what major you choose, that's what you get. So if you're a history, English major, you get the BS degree, just because I mentioned our core curriculum, because we have a very STEM-oriented curriculum. So I think that's what helps us a lot.
Yeah, so how do you think attending a military school can kind of help with like future careers and plans?
So after attending the service academies, you're gonna be an officer in whatever branch you chose. And after you're done serving, and if you wanna go do a civilian career, I think they really value service. And since you're an officer, which is basically the leaders of the enlisted, I think look at that, and I think most people get management positions. So yeah, I think careers they really favor the graduates from the Naval Academy, West Point, and Air Force.
Yeah. So I believe this is our last question. So after education, you mentioned after the first 4 years, you have to continue serving for 5. So what are like the different paths you can take? I know there's like Navy and like aviation career or serving paths.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, we have 4 major service selections, and surface warfare is when you're on a boat or like a warship or destroyer, cruiser, aircraft carrier, and you're depending on what job you are, you could be. Your main goal is to, so as a junior officer, so when you just graduate, you're gonna be an ensign, that's like junior officer, and you're just gonna be managing some of the enlisted, so it'll be like around like 5 to 10 enlisted, and that's your division, so you're a division officer basically. And that'll be the same for submarine warfare, but you're underwater most of the time. And for naval aviation, that's the one that's like mostly, that's the different one. Yeah, that's a special one. But that's when you become either a pilot or a naval flight officer. But most people pick pilot because that's cooler. But yeah, so you go to school in Pensacola for I think about a year, and after that, I think they assign you to a certain aircraft you can fly. Yeah. Yeah, this is what they look like.
So are those the main 2 different
Okay,
uniforms?
so in like a normal academic period or academic day, we wear blues, which is, it's actually special, like we would only wear that at the Naval Academy. So if you were actually in the Navy, people would be like, why are you wearing that? So yeah, I can actually show you guys a picture. Yeah, they look like this.
So are these uniforms like you have to buy them yourself, or are they given to you?
Okay, so we have we have something called an ACE loan, and over the time, so we get paid as midshipmen, and over time, we get deducted for our uniform costs and our other costs such as laundry, rooming, and food and stuff. But we just don't see that happening because they do it for us. But we do pay for our uniforms.
Okay. This is so cool. Okay. So.
Oh yeah. So this is my contact information. If you want to find me again, and if you're interested in the Naval Academy or other service academies, yeah, just let me know.
Yeah. So I think there were a few other questions from the registration that weren't covered in this presentation. Okay. I can pull that up. In the meantime, does anyone in the audience have any questions?
Yeah.
What is one of your favorite memories from the Naval
Favorite
Academy?
memories? I'd say I think Halloween, just because we gotta because so as a plebe you don't get to wear civilian clothes, so like we have to always be in uniform, and it was just nice to dress up and be ourselves just for a night. Oh.
I have 2 questions. The first one is about the application, because applying for military college sounds like a very committed thing. So can you apply for military schools and regular schools at the same time in your high school senior year?
Yeah.
Which means when you get an offer from both a military school or regular school, can you make a choice, or you have to commit to the military school?
Oh no, you don't have to commit. You can say no to the Naval Academy if you want to, but yeah. So I think the deadline is a little earlier for the Naval Academy, if I'm not wrong, or well, you have to get your nomination earlier. So, but I think, and we also had our acceptances later, so you didn't really find out that you got in until April maybe. But I think other colleges, I'm not really sure when they send out applications. They're like, whatever. They're I think it might be I don't know, but when do you guys know like when normal colleges send their March? Yeah. So I think some people, if they don't get their medical examination approved yet, then they don't get their acceptance until maybe May or April. So, yeah. Yeah.
I also have two questions. First, what actually inspired you to apply for service academies?
I think for me, I wanted to do something a little different than my peers, just because I grew up and I was always pressured by my mom to go to like a prestigious school. And when I realized I was applying for college, I thought that I didn't really think I'd fit into any of the schools that I was going to apply to. And then my sister, she applied to West Point actually, and I wanted to see how to explore other service academies, and I applied to actually all three of them: West Point, Navy, and Air Force, and I decided to go to Navy.
And the second question is, what is the toughest time that you have experienced for the thing that you have experienced so far?
I think the toughest experience I've had is, I think plebe year itself is a very tough experience, just because. Huh?
The boot camp?
Oh yeah, so Plebe Summer, that's only 6 weeks long, but after that you have a whole year of basically like a little watered down but almost the same thing. And I think just helping, just being able to connect with yourself and helping others around you and accepting help from others and being able to push through when you're like being comfortable being uncomfortable, I think would be my answer.
Thank you.
And what's the ratio of boys and girls in the
Oh,
Naval
okay.
Academy?
So I think the Naval Academy has the best ratio, but I think it should be like around 30-70%. So 30 girls, 30% women and 10% men.
Sounds like you are commit after graduation, like 5+ years of service, right?
Mhm.
So during school, the 4 plus the 5, are you allowed to, I don't know, just get married, and build a family?
Yeah. So you can get married after graduation. You can't get married as a midshipman because you can't have any dependents. You can't have a child either. So, but if you do get pregnant, or you can take leave, and then you have to give your rights away for that child. But after you graduate, you can you're a naval officer and you can have a family, you can get married. Yeah. And the Navy is very good about accommodating your family and thinking of putting your family first before.
And also you mentioned about you have to take boxing and wrestling classes. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering what type of weapon training do you ever take, and if so, what type of weapons and what level do you have to get?
Okay, so over the summer, Plebe Summer, we did we got our rifle qualifications and pistol. I'm not really sure what the pistol was. I think the rifle was an M4 or M16, one of them. So yeah, but I think I shot once during Plebe Summer and once during Marine Week last month. So yeah, not a lot of shooting, and it's very safe if you're worried about that, because they do a really good job of making sure no one gets hurt.
Question. You mentioned you have a 5-year commitment after graduation. Excuse me. So, is there a graduate school option?
Yeah, you can go to graduate school, and the Navy they might actually pay for your graduate education, depending on if you get the Bowman Scholar, which is a scholarship given to the submarine officers. So yeah, you can go to graduate school.
So you go to grad school outside of the Navy Academy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Does
And
that count as your 5 years, or?
no. So yeah, how much time you spend in graduate school, it gets subtracted
Okay.
from.
And after 5 years, can you choose to stay in the Navy, or you can just find other jobs?
Yeah, you can stay in the Navy. Actually, our Secretary of Defense is a Naval Academy graduate, So
Just
I guess
stays in the
yeah,
office.
you're allowed to stay however you want because you're a naval officer. But I think a lot of people graduate from the Naval Academy. They decide to 5 and dive, which is after 5 years you leave. Yeah, there's a mix of both.
What is the most sought after majors in the academy?
I think I would say so. Political science is a big one. Quantitative economics, and yeah, those are the main ones I think. But yeah, not a lot of so for the Naval Academy, there's a limit on non-STEM majors. Each class can have. So a lot of people get actually transferred, like they're forced to transfer majors if you're a political science or economic major. And yeah, they have to transfer to a STEM major like math or a double E.
Are there other questions in the audience? If not, I can pull some from the floor.
Was there medical major?
Oh yeah, so we have a pre-med program kind of, and this is one thing I forgot to mention. But after graduating, you can go into the medical corps of the Navy. So yeah, if you want to be a doctor, you can also do that. Yeah, we have stuff for everyone.
Okay. So I guess one of the questions is how do you choose the career as you register, which you kind of mentioned about like careers afterwards.
So your service selection happens your senior year, so first year, and what you do is you put down your top 5 preferences, and they go down in each one. So first one, if they don't want you, the second one they say no, then third choice, and then some people actually get drafted into a certain selection. So if you have like pilot, NFO, Marines, surface, you might get drafted to surface at the bottom or submarine.
Yeah. And then for extra information, is there like a website you can go to, or what are some good resources for that?
For service selection or just the Naval Academy?
For everything.
Oh, for everything? There's like the Naval Academy website, and Service Academy forums was very helpful when not here. I can type them up. I need to make sure I get the link right.
So yeah, service activity forums, and then I guess also reaching out to people, would you say is helpful?
Yeah, like reaching out to people that you know that might have graduated from the academy, and also you're assigned an officer once you start the application process, and that's a good source for if you have any more questions.
And then in terms of like extra requirements for the admissions, is it mostly just the nomination and also the fitness test?
Yeah, so I think you covered it. So it would be the nomination and CFA, and I think they require 3 letters of recommendations. I know some colleges have them that are optional, but I think it's required for the Naval Academy.
Okay. And then for the nomination, what happens if you're like unable to get a nomination from your, I guess, respective congressman?
So unfortunately, if you don't get a nomination, then you don't get a ticket into the Naval Academy, because that's actually the most limiting. I think that's like the factor that cuts a lot of people off. So in places like Washington D.C. or Maryland or Virginia, those are very competitive states for service academies, just because they're very military oriented, and usually get like the best of the best applicants from there, just because it's very selective in those states. But even if you don't get a nomination, I think they could put you in NAPS, which is a program, preparatory school program, and after a year you can reapply.
So you mean that when the congressmen or the senators, they write the recommendation letters, they don't write for everyone who
Yeah.
asks for it.
So I
They
think only
select applicants.
so only 10 people get a nomination each year, but after that you have to compete with all those 10 people again, just because there will be 5. They can only have 5. So each representative, they can only have 5 people at the Service Academy at one point. And if all those 5 slots are filled up, then nobody gets a nomination that year. But usually I think there will always be 1 spot available for each representative each year.
So then how many people are accepted to the Naval Academy each year?
I think around 12, like, it's a little over our limit just because they factor in the retention rate, but it might be around like 1,300.
Do you know around like how many per state or like in Washington?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Do not have that statistic.
That's okay. Are there any other questions from the audience?
So speaking of acceptance rate, so it looks like USNA has acceptance of about 9 to 10%. So is that for people who already secured their congressman recommendations?
So that's for so that actually includes people who didn't get their nomination, but I think that's out of the total people who finished their application, but we're missing something that like limited them. So like medical disqualifications, nominations, and physical limitations. Probably.
Are there any other questions? If not, it's 11:02. So I guess thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and also
Yeah,
thank
thank
you so
you
much
guys.
for staying.